Hello, hello. It is Erica with Holy Rustic, and we are here today to paint our Tier Tray Club box. So this month's box is all about red, white, and blue, and so we are going to paint this together. I've got my brushes, I've got my paint, I have my towel, my water, and we are going to get painting. Inside your kit, you're going to have 4 little pieces and a little banner along with some stands. So this is a little easel, which I don't paint usually, so we're going to just set that over to the side. These 2 pieces are going to go with our little Lady Liberty here, and then you have a sign that says Happy 4th of July, a little Liberty Bell, and a little America sign. So we are going to get a painting. So come in, say hey, let me know if you've gotten your box yet and if you have opened it and started painting it. I'm going to start with this America sign here. And we're going to grab a sponge. So in your kit, all of our kits include a makeup sponge that you can use to paint with. It is perfect for this space right here where we want to, there we go. I'm going to move this up just a little bit because I tend to paint right here. And if I don't, we're going to be out of the frame. Okay. So anyway, the sponge is great for right here because we don't want to push a bunch of paint down into these engraved lines. We want to still be able to see where it says Land That I Love. So the sponge will allow us to do that without pushing a bunch of paint in there. So you're going to take your sponge, you're going to grab the top of it, the triangle shaped part, you're going to dip it into the paint, and then you're going to come over to the side and you're going to tap off a couple of times so that you don't have a ton of paint on your sponge. And then we are just going to go straight up and down. I'm going to switch this video around here. There we go. We're going to go straight up and down on that piece to paint that background. Now, I'm not worried about where it says America because I have 3D letters that are going to go over that. But down here where it says Land That I Love, this is where I want to be a little bit more careful to not push a bunch of paint down in those engraved lines. So using the sponge allows me to paint over that section without filling that space with paint. And I'm using a light blue here, and we're going to give it a couple of quick coats. So we're just painting that. And see how, even though I have painted over it, I can still really see those engraved lines very well because I'm not taking a bunch of paint and pushing it down into the lines. If I used my paintbrush, I would inevitably end up with a lot of paint inside of those lines, and you would not be able to see them as well. So some people are always like, how do you get that to look so clean? This is how we do it. And that way we don't have to worry about taking a paint pen or a paintbrush and going back over top of those lines. Just makes life a little easier. All right, we're going to let that dry for just a moment. Let's see what else we might want to paint this color. We're going to paint the word happy with this light blue as well while we've got this on our sponge. We'll do that one, and then this coat should be dry and we can come back and do another coat. It's always better to do thin coats rather than trying to gob all the paint on here at one time. And where it says America, we've got that 3D word, which will go right over top of that. Okay, so I think that is looking pretty good. We'll go over this one more time. And that's a nice light blue color. Let's go ahead and switch to a darker blue. We're going to do this This is the back of our Liberty Bell piece. So we're going to do this in the darker blue. It does have some stars etched on it, which we will paint in as well. But I'm going to do the whole thing with the dark blue, and then I will paint in the stars, and it will just make my life a little bit easier. Anytime you can do that, where you can paint everything one color and then do like the fussy details like stripes or things like that, it just is a little bit easier instead of trying to go around it twice. The other option here would be to paint around the stars and then paint the stars. So it's kind of silly to do that because then you're just doing hard work twice. So don't do that. Only do the hard work once. Okay. The middle here is where the Liberty Bell is going. Not terribly worried about how that looks right now. And I think that's a nice coverage of that dark blue. We're going to paint the top of our firework here with that dark blue and the word July as well. And then the corners of these little banners. Let's see if we can do this with our sponge. Yes. So we'll do each one of these little heart-shaped flags with this dark blue. You could also do this with your paintbrush. I've just got this blue on this sponge, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it like this. Okay, let's do the bottom of this here firework in the light blue. Okay, I thought I lost you. Okay, so we're just gonna, I have some of that dark blue still, but I've also picked up some of the lighter blue, and we're just gonna do the bottom of the firework in that color. And I think that is everything that we're going to do in that lighter blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sponge and I'm going to clip the end of the sponge. I'm just cutting straight across. And so now I have a brand new sponge that I can use to paint again with a new color. So we're going to use red. Let's do white. I do have a few things that I want to do white. I think maybe just one actually. So we're going to do this word that says Liberty with some white. And I'm going to go ahead and do these hearts with white as well. So remember how I was saying we don't want to do the fussy details twice. So we'll paint the whole thing white, and then we can come in and put the red for the stripes for the flag on there. And then that way we're only doing the stripes once instead of twice. And you could also do this with your brush, but like I said before, we've got the sponge. So we're just going to use it while we have it. There are a few pieces that I want to paint yellow, and yellow is always very translucent. So we're going to grab some tape and put these pieces down on some tape. We're going to give them a coat of white, and then that way when we put the yellow on, it will just be a little bit easier. So we're going to do the top of this torch and our Lady Liberty's hair, and then all of our stars. Should be 4 for those, a big one for our Liberty Bell, and then these 3 that go on the firework. So we're going to do all this in yellow. So what I'm going to do is just put down just a quick coat of white, and that way our yellow will pop on that white, and then we'll come back and do these flags again. So our Tier Tray Club of the Month is a monthly subscription box that we have. It is delivered to your door each month. It's an automatic reoccurring subscription. Inside the box, you're going to get all of the pieces to paint an exclusive kit. So these kits are not on the website. The only way that you can get them is if you are a member of the Tiered Tray Club. And it's just a fun little way to have something to paint each month. Take a few minutes for yourself. They usually paint up fairly quickly. And then you get something cute to display. All right, let's grab a little bit of yellow. So inside the box, you're going to get all your pieces for your tiered tray kit. You're going to get a makeup sponge. You're going to get the paint colors to go with this month's kit. You are going to receive a tiny bottle of glue that you can use to glue everything together. Any string or anything you need for your banner will be in there as well. An inspiration photo, and you get a coupon that you can use for any of the tiered tray items in our store. So if you want to buy another kit or whatever. And some people say, well, I don't have a tiered tray, but these kits work really well also for like coffee bar areas and that kind of stuff. So it doesn't necessarily have to go on a tiered tray. It can go on in a lot of places. All right, let's do our red pieces next. I'm going to clip the sponge again. So just cutting straight across, and that way we can use this for our red. We're going to do the word America. And we're going to do the number, the fourth, and the of as well. And so there are a lot of ways that you can tackle these kits. If this seems overwhelming to have to like figure out, okay, what all the pieces are red and which all the pieces are this color, you could do one little sign at a time. I just do it this way because I know I'm going to be clipping that sponge, so I want to use all of one color before I move on to the next. But there are lots of ways that you can paint these kits up. Okay, this Happy 4th of sign is going to be a white. I am not worried about where the letters are because those are just to show us where to put those 3D pieces. So if I wanted that to show the engraving, then I would use my sponge, but because I don't necessarily need it to be super crisp because we're going to put the 3D parts over top of it, I'm using my brush here. Okay, and white is one of those colors that you're going to need a couple coats on. Just like we do with the sponge, we're going to do thin coats. Give it just a moment to dry. The wood soaks that paint up fairly quickly, and then once it's dry, we can come back and give it another coat. Let's go ahead and do gray. So we're going to take a little bit of black with some white and just mix a nice soft gray. We're going to paint up the little tablet that Lady Liberty is holding that says 1776. We are going to paint our Liberty Bell. So a little bit of black and some white. And we'll just come in and paint this. And I kind of like for it to not be completely mixed. That way I just get a little variation in the color and it kind of makes it look more like a pewter. I'm going to get just a little bit more black to do the bottom of our bell here, just so we have a little bit different of a gray. Give this a little shape. Okay. And then the top here, we'll just paint it black. And we need to do the little crown for Our Lady Liberty as well with this gray. And I think the top of her head. This part is going to be gray. It is a dreary, rainy day here, and I would like to just go snuggle in bed. What is it about rainy days that make you just want to stay in bed all day? All right, there's her crown part, and we're gonna do. This, the torch, the bottom of her torch, also. Now her hand is 3D, so we're not worried about that part. And so I think that should be all of those pieces. Let's rinse that brush out. We're gonna grab, let's go ahead and do another coat of white on this side. So if you get our tiered tray club, let me know where you display your pieces. Do you put them on a tiered tray? Or are you putting them on a shelf or a mantle? Are you spreading them throughout in your decor? How are you displaying your tiered tray pieces? I love to hear how you're putting those up. All right, I'm gonna grab a tiny bit of brown here. And I'm going to come right along where these etched lines are to make this look like wood. And this is definitely extra, but I don't know. I just feel like being extra today. So I'm going to put that on. I'm going to wipe my brush off so I don't have hardly any paint on here. And then I'm just going to pull back and forth across where I put that brown paint. My white is still damp. And that way we just get just a little bit more definition in, there we go, in the lines. It's very hard to see on the camera, but it's there. We're going to paint in these pieces, which are like the tops of the bell. So we'll make these brown. And then I think we just about got everything painted here. We're going to do, let's put those hands over there. We're going to do Lady Liberty's dress here. So let's start with this sash, and I'm going to take kind of this mint green color and a little bit of white and paint this in and paint in the bottom of her dress here. And I'm going to do one of these stands as well. These are going to stack up, so I don't have to do both of them. I can just do one. And let's see. And I'll come back and do another coat. I'm going to plug in our dryer. That way I can dry this fairly quickly and we're not sitting around watching paint dry. Okay, so we'll give this a quick dry and then we'll come back and do another coat. this a second. I guess this is really like a third coat. Okay. And this stand. And then this little sashy piece. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to do a little distressing on that. I'm going to give that a moment to dry. Let's grab, I forgot to get a skin color. So let's grab kind of a peachy color. Whoop. And we're going to paint in her hands and her face. Okay, so on her head here, we've got this 3D piece. So I don't have to worry about the top of her head because we've got that to go up there. So I just want to make sure I paint high enough up that that is going to be covered. And then we're just going to go right on here. We're going to paint in her eyes. So I'm not worried about those. Right up to that neckline. Okay. And then we've got two little hands as well. Perfect. We'll give those a quick dry, do a second coat, and then we'll do the eyes. Okay. So we'll do a second coat on her face. And her hands. Okay. And let's do, I'm going to take the bottom of my paintbrush and come over and do a dot of black for each of her eyes. Go. And then I'm going to mix a little bit of white with a tiny bit of red to just get a little pink. And we're going to give her some cheeks. So I'm going to come right where her eyes are and just tap kind of in a circle. And then I'll just take my finger and blend that. Okay. And I know sometimes people are afraid to do this kind of stuff, like the little details. Here's the thing. Worst case scenario, you don't like it. Guess what? You can paint over top of it. It's just paint. It's not the end of the world. So just go for it and see what you think. And if you hate it, paint over top of it. Not a big deal. All right, I'm going to grab a little bit of brown and just kind of barely dry brush that into this yellow on her hair. Just because her hair is looking a very bright yellow, I want to kind of tone it down a little bit. And then let's do a little bit of distressing here to her. So we're going to grab a little bit of that brown, tap it off over on the side. And I'm going to come across her dress, just barely. So I'm just barely dragging that brush across the edge. And then with very little bit of paint on my brush, I can start to pull in towards the center. Just to kind of give her a little bit of distressing. And we can do the same thing to her sash here. And I'm going to kind of stick to those 3 lines that kind of show us how her sash is laid out there. Okay, what else do we have? Let's do that to her little tablet as well while we've got this. I'm using the brown because it kind of looks bronzy in my opinion. So it's kind of giving us a bronzy look against that green and the gray, which is kind of a silvery color. I'll throw a little bit on the bell as well. Okay, let's do, we need to do the stripes on here and the stars on that other piece. So let's do the stripes first. So we're going to grab a tiny brush. You could also do this with a paint pen if you prefer. We're going to do this one as well. We're going to grab our red. And we're going to do our stripes. So I'm just going to go right along where those edge lines are and fill in the red. If you have kind of a shaky hand or you're worried about these looking perfect, a paint pen would also work really well for doing this. I will say that red, especially in a paint pen, can sometimes be a tricky color. So just kind of test it somewhere before you come over and do your piece. But it's okay to use your tools. You don't have to do it with a paintbrush. Some people will think that using a paint pen is cheating, and I would 100% disagree. It's using your resources, and some days my hands are steadier than others. There are days where these kind of fussy details are just not going to look great, and there are other days where it's just effortless. And I will say also having a good paintbrush does really help. So not necessarily an expensive brush, but just one that you haven't beat up. And look, I made a mistake there, and my line got really wonky there, but I'm going to fix it, so it's not the end of the world. So no, let that dry while I do this other one, and then I'll show you how we can touch it up. Red is hard to cover, but it's not impossible. And the other thing is, I'm going to, once these are dry, I'm going to do a little distressing on these, and that will help hide some of those imperfections. You know, this is not a mass-produced item for Hobby Lobby or whatever. It's meant to look hand-painted. And there is beauty in the imperfections. So if yours gets a little crazy, I encourage you to just embrace it. It'll be okay. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes we stress too much about the little things. All right, so I did the stripes on our firework also. I'm going to rinse this brush out, and I'm going to grab this one here. I want to make sure that red is completely dry. Here's the thing about fixing your mistakes. The number one thing that I see people do when they go to fix mistakes is they don't let the paint dry and they just keep trying to fix it. And what happens as you do that is you're just making a new color because your paint is wet. And so stop, take a deep breath, let it dry, because it will make trying to fix it so much easier if the paint is actually dry. And all I'm doing is taking a little bit of white and just coming over where that red was that I didn't want. And look at that. Beautiful. Gorgeous. All right, I'm going to grab my scruffy brush again. I'm going to dry that really well. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that brown. Again, I don't want a ton of paint on my brush. We're just going to pull a little bit of brown across. And this is where I said distressing can cover a multitude of sins. So if you're not liking your lines or whatever, a little bit of distressing just kind of helps hide the imperfections. It makes them look intentional instead of like, oh, well, she can't paint a straight line. Okay, and a little bit of my red is wet. It's picked up against there. I'm okay with it. It looks pretty cool, actually. So I really like the way that those look. All right. Oh, we got these stars. Stars. Okay, so I want to paint in all of these stars with white. I'm debating whether I want to do it with a paint pen or with my brush. I'm trying to see if I see a white paint pen close by here. I don't see. Oh, maybe. Let's see if this one works. All right, so these are grabby acrylic markers, extra fine tip. You can get them in a variety of colors. So this is, there's other pens in here, but you can see all these smaller ones. These all came in a color pack. You can also get them in just black and white, which is the ones that I tend to use most often. And I bought them on Amazon. They weren't terribly expensive, but they can work really well for doing this kind of stuff. And the trick with the acrylic pens is you just need to be careful about how you press down. And actually, I am just going to use a brush because that's a lot to do with that paint pen. And I don't feel like being that fussy. So the paint pens work, the way they work is when you press down, that is how the paint comes out. And so you just have to be careful about how you're pressing with the markers while you're using them, so that you don't end up with big puddles of paint. I think there's, in my opinion, a little bit of a learning curve there to using them, but they can be a lot of fun and a nice little resource to have, especially if you're somebody who's worried about your hands shaking or getting perfect lines. I honestly try not to stress about things being perfect. And I will say I have learned how to better letter things and do the finer lines. It is a practice and a skill that you get better at over time. Because painting with a paintbrush is not the same as writing with a pen or a pencil or whatever. Okay, so you may be looking at this and going, what is she doing? Like this part of this star is covered with that. This part of that star is covered with that. So I'm not fussing over those parts that I know are not even going to show. Right? There is no need for me to sit here and waste my time painting in pieces that no one's going to ever see. And I know that's going to probably stress people out. It's okay. If it stresses you out, you can paint the whole star. But I am not going to remember once I get all this glued down that I didn't paint that part underneath of there, and it is 100% not going to bother me. I'll say if you want to do this with a brush, a nice flat brush will help, because you can just take that flat edge and come, oh, I have red on there, come right up against your stars, and you get a nice little bit. And what I do is I kind of dab off in the middle first, and then when I'm ready to come up next to the edge, I don't have big globs of paint on my brush. And so that will help. So instead of dipping into the paint and then coming right over against that edge, dip into the paint and then kind of put it in the middle first, so you're not coming against that edge with a ton of paint on your brush. And then I'm keeping that brush kind of up on its tiptoes, so that I'm using the flat edge of my brush to come right up against those stars. So the middle first, and then come up against that edge. The other thing that would work well here would be like an angle brush. Might also work really well. Sometimes we have a tendency when we're doing little details to try to grab the tiniest brush that we can find. And here's the thing about doing that. You're going to end up with a lot of paint lines that you're going to be trying to smooth out because you are using a tiny little brush. And little brushes don't hold very much paint. So a lot of times when you do that, you're making it harder than it needs to be. When I'm teaching classes and we've got to draw like a big line across the sky or whatever for horizon line, people tend to want to grab the little script liner. And I'm like, no, grab your big brush. And when you load it, you're going to flip and flatten into that paint. And then you're going to hold it right up on its tiptoes to get a nice little line. And you're going to have more control with that big brush than you will with that tiny little brush, because that tiny little brush is going to run out of paint. And it's just harder to control when you're painting like a big line across the sky or whatever. All right, I'm just putting a little more paint in the centers here of each of these little stars. The other thing here is, like, once you get the fussy detailed part, then I don't really have to necessarily go right up to the edge again. I can just make sure that the middle has a good coverage of the white when I come in for my second coat. I don't have to be so fussy and get right up next to that edge, because your eye does a lot of work for us in filling in details and stuff. And so it's not going to really notice that we didn't go all the way up to the edge that second time around. And especially on this piece, you know, these stars, they're in the background, so they're really not the main character. So sometimes I try to think about too, like, is this the main part of my painting, or is this just like a supporting actor? And does it really matter? Okay. I think we are ready to glue. So what we're going to do We're going to grab our glue. Inside your kit, you're going to have a little bottle of craft glue that you can use to glue all your pieces down. I'm going to use this bigger bottle because I try not to waste those little bottles while I am sitting here. This one is clogged. I left the lid off of it. It's my own fault. Let's see if I can get it unclogged. I've got some movement there. There we go. Okay. So let's do our little Lady Liberty Bell here first. So we're going to put down, so when you use this glue, you need just a little bit. It doesn't take a ton of glue. You don't want big puddles of glue on your piece. And then we're going to just stick it down. Our glues that we use are not a fast dry glue. So it does take some time for that glue to set up. It does dry clear. But you just want to let everything lay flat for 24 hours so you make sure everything is nice and glued down. It does seem like it's glued usually in about 30 minutes or so, but it needs the full time to cure because if you start setting up your pieces, they will slide on you. And I'm just using the etched lines here to put these pieces on, just lining them up. And then we're going to put the word Liberty on this bell. And we're going to put a star on here as well. So Liberty and this bigger star. And there we go. So there's our cute little Liberty Bell. All right. Let's do this little banner. So all we're going to do for this is put one star in each one of the blue squares here. That's pretty easy. And then we'll take a piece of string and string these up once they're dry. Cute. Okay. Boop, boop, boop. Move you over there. We'll do this America sign. And I am realizing that I do not have the dot for my eye. I don't know where it got to, so I will, I'll just leave that and then I can, oh, wait, here, maybe here it is. There he is. Okay, we'll put him down and then we'll just paint him. I'll live dangerously here. Perfect. Okay. So America, land that I love. Cute. We've got our little Happy 4th of July sign. So we're going to put the little firework on here. And the top of the firework. Boop. And these 3 little stars. I really like this set. I wish almost that it didn't have this Happy 4th of July sign because since it is the 250 this year, I feel like you can leave patriotic decor up a little bit longer, and it's almost Memorial Day too. But we do have the Happy 4th. But you could always not put this piece out and put everything else out if you wanted something that's just a little more patriotic and not so much 4th of July. There's that option. We did go very patriotic this month with the designs. And some people may go, well, it's only May. I don't know why you're doing all the patriotic stuff. But the reason being is because people get their kits all month long. And so if you get your kit at the end of June, like if we did this as June's kit instead of May's kit, it would be really, really close to the 4th of July. So I wanted you to have time to paint it and display it before the holiday. So that's why it may seem like we're early, but we're not. All right, we're going to glue those 2 little stands together. And then we've got our little Lady Liberty. So her sash sits at an angle. So you just kind of have to figure out where it lines up. And then we'll put that piece down. And then we've got her crown and her hair. We'll line that up at the top here. This little fancy piece. That's going to go whoop, 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 right on the top of her crown. Okay. And then her torch. We'll put in one hand, and her little tablet. We'll put in her other hand. I'm trying to figure out where I want to put it. I guess I do want it kind of up on her sash here. Otherwise, her hands are going to look like they're in 2 very different places. And then we'll put her little hands on there. Oh my goodness, she's cute. Okay. So let's go over, and then when she's dry, she'll just go inside this stand so that she can stand up. So let's go over what we've got. We've got our little banner here, which we'll put on string here in a bit. Once it's dry, we've got our Happy 4th of July, America Land That I Love, our cute little Lady Liberty, and our Liberty Bell. And then if you wanted, this is a great time where you can come in and you can add in, you know, little details like dots and swipes or whatever you want to add to kind of make this your own and maybe just a little extra. Or you can leave it just as is. I always say, you know, nobody's going to know if you did all the little extra fussy details or not, because no one is going to see your piece against anyone else's piece. All they're going to see is yours. So you do whatever you want. Go as crazy or as simple as you want it to be. I think this is sometimes where people's personalities come out in all the little details versus in just the painting. Well, a lot of times we're going to paint it fairly similarly. Oh, why do that word just seems so hard to say right now? But, you know, the little details are kind of what makes it more your own. So, anyways, I hope that you are having, we're going to do this again with the camera. Did this to me the other day. I hope that you have enjoyed painting this tier tray box with me. I would love to see yours. So when you get it painted up, be sure to drop a picture for us so that we can see it, and let me know if you have any questions, and have a fabulous day. Bye, y'all.